How Europe's ReArm itself. So, there's an extraordinary summit coming up in Brussels focused on defense and Ukraine, right?
Yes, that's correct. EU leaders are responding to growing concerns about Europe's security architecture, especially after the US suspended military aid to Ukraine.
And ahead of this summit, a new proposal has been introduced called the ReArm Europe Plan. What does it entail?
The plan could mobilize up to €800 billion and increase defense spending across member states, which is quite significant.
That's a huge amount. What are the key measures proposed in this plan?
One of the primary measures is a new instrument that would provide €150 billion in loans for joint European defense investments, focusing on critical capabilities like missile defense and artillery systems.
But I've heard there are divisions among member states regarding financing. What's the issue there?
Indeed, member states are divided on issuing Eurobonds for defense expenditures. Some frugal states oppose common debt issuance, which complicates the funding mechanism.
And what about the legal framework for this funding? How does that work?
The proposed mechanism would be established under Article 122 of the EU Treaty, allowing financial support to member states facing severe difficulties without needing European Parliament approval.
That sounds like a strategic move. Are there any other proposals included in the ReArm Europe plan?
Yes, it also includes expanding the European Investment Bank's role in defense financing and leveraging cohesion policy funds for military expenditures.
So, it seems like Europe is taking significant steps toward enhancing its defense capabilities. It's definitely a topic to watch.
Absolutely. The implications of this plan could reshape Europe's defense landscape for years to come.
So, there's a lot of buzz around Germany's Sondervermögen. What exactly is it?
It's essentially a special fund that Germany created in 2022 to bypass constitutional debt limits, particularly for military investments.
Right. And I heard they've allocated €100 billion for defense through this fund?
Exactly. This allocation is crucial, especially as the CDU and SPD are now proposing new exemptions from the debt brake for defense spending.
So, if NATO raises its target to 3% of GDP, how does that affect Germany's spending?
If that happens, 2% of Germany's defense spending, which is about €88 billion, would be exempt from the debt brake, while 1% would still count towards it.
And there's also a plan for a €500 billion special fund for infrastructure, right?
Yes, that fund aims to modernize education, transport, healthcare, and energy infrastructure over the next decade, and it too would be exempt from the debt brake.
What about the urgency of these initiatives? When might the Bundestag approve them?
The Bundestag could approve these initiatives before the end of the month, highlighting the urgency for both national and EU-wide defense efforts.
And how does this relate to the broader EU context, especially with the recent geopolitical tensions?
During the Munich Security Conference, there was a proposal to activate a national escape clause for defense spending, potentially freeing up around 1.5% of GDP across EU countries.
That sounds significant. But are there any divisions among EU leaders regarding military assistance to Ukraine?
Yes, there are divisions, particularly with leaders from Hungary and Slovakia signaling their intent to veto any increase in military aid to Kiev, which could hinder a unified response.
So, it seems like the upcoming summit is quite critical, but immediate decisions on defense financing might be delayed?
Correct. Leaders are expected to defer substantial commitments until a follow-up meeting after the presentation of a white paper on European defense this month.